After our family reunion, I came home to find my savings nearly wiped out. My bank account just 2 days ago held over $9,000. Now, $83.52. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I blinked, refreshed, checked again. No mistake. My money was gone. I called the bank in a panic. They said the transactions came from a familiar device. Same IP address, same login. It was my mom's house. I had just spent the entire weekend there, laughing, hugging, smiling, surrounded by people I trusted, people I loved. Now, I was staring at the biggest betrayal of my life. When I confronted them, my brother-in-law smirked. "We needed that money more than you," he said. And then he laughed. They thought I'd let it go. They thought I'd stay quiet. But they didn't know I had been keeping records since 2019. Every dollar, every transfer, every sacrifice. My name is Claire Jennings. I live in Seattle. And I used to believe blood was everything. Until the people I called family stole from me without shame. This is the story of how I took my life and power back. Have you ever been treated like a walking wallet by your own family? Have you ever felt invisible until they needed something? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And stick around, because what happened next might just change how you define loyalty forever. I didn't even take my coat off. The second I hung up with the bank, I grabbed my keys and drove straight back to my mom's house. Same kitchen, same faded wallpaper, same family photos on the fridge, but everything felt off, like I was stepping into a crime scene. Jenna, my younger sister, was lounging on the couch, sipping red wine like it was just another quiet evening. She didn't even look up. "You're back already?" she asked casually, like I'd just stopped by for dessert. Kyle, her husband, walked out of the kitchen with a soda can in hand. He leaned against the fridge, eyes half-lidded, smirking. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just checked my bank account." Even saying it out loud made my stomach twist. Jenna tilted her head like I was being dramatic. Kyle shrugged. "We needed that money more than you did." He said it like it was nothing, like emptying my account was a shared favor. I froze. I couldn't even process it. No apology, no shame, just a sickening sense of entitlement. Jenna lifted her glass and added, "Come on, Claire. You've got no kids, no debt, no real obligations. You're doing fine." She smiled, as if that made it okay. I turned to Mom. She was in the corner, knitting, eyes fixed on her hands. She didn't even flinch. "Claire," she said, her voice soft like a lullaby. "You always overreact. You have more than enough. What's wrong with helping out a little?" My throat tightened. I turned to Dad. He didn't even look up from his phone. "Don't stir up drama," he mumbled. "It's family business." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask them how this could possibly be okay. But all that came out was a whisper. "How did you even get into my account?" Jenna gave a lazy shrug. "I used Mom's computer. You must have left it logged in. That's on you." She actually said that. Like I was the one who messed up. Like I had invited this. And just like that, the truth dropped into place. They didn't feel guilty. They felt entitled. Not one of them looked sorry. Not one asked if I was okay. Not one offered to fix it. My hands clenched until my nails dug into my palms. And in that moment, something inside me, quiet and buried, snapped free. They thought I'd forget. They thought I'd forgive. But what they didn't know was that this time, I was done. I left without another word. No one tried to stop me. No one even stood up. As I reached the door, my mother's voice drifted behind me, almost as an afterthought. "Don't forget Sunday dinner." Sunday dinner, like nothing had happened. Like stealing from me was just another family errand. I paused at the doorway, hand gripping the knob, heart thundering in my chest. I turned around, looked at all of them one last time. "If you think I'm just gonna let this go, wait and see what happens next." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You're being so theatrical." Kyle laughed again. "That money helped us survive. Stop being selfish." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. Rage, grief, maybe even years of swallowed pain. Outside, it had started to rain. Inside me, another storm had begun to build. I drove through the downpour, knuckles white against the steering wheel. My thoughts were racing, replaying every word, every smirk, every time they dismissed my sacrifices as if they were nothing. No remorse, No apology, not even an ounce of acknowledgement. I didn't go home right away. I pulled into the parking lot at Green Lake Park, where I usually jog on Saturday mornings, and sat there in silence. The rain tapped gently against the windshield, but inside my heart was a drumline of betrayal. I reopened the banking app. That number, 83, 52, glared back at me, cold and undeniable. And yet, a part of me wasn't surprised. When I first got promoted at 27, Jenna had called. "Hey, my phone got cut off. Can you spot me some cash?" I didn't hesitate. Of course I would help. We're family, right? Then it was Kyle. "Just need a few hundred until I find something. I'm trying, Claire. You know that." Then came Haley's birthday, my niece. Jenna sent me a gift list. The cheapest item was $200. I hesitated. Then Mom called. "Claire, she's so excited. You're not going to disappoint her, are you?" And like that, the pattern began. They didn't even have to ask anymore. I was the reliable one, the stable one, the family bank. Amanda got a new car. Guess who helped with the down payment? Kyle lost his wallet. Guess who wired him money at midnight? Mom's power got cut. Guess who skipped groceries to pay it off? It wasn't help. It was expected. Every time I said yes, they smiled. Every time I struggled, they didn't notice. Not once did anyone ask, "Claire, are you okay?" I looked out at the gray water of the lake and whispered to myself, I am not their emergency fund. I am not their fallback plan. I opened my notes app and started typing. Every dollar I gave, every time I said yes when I wanted to say no, every quiet sacrifice I made. So they wouldn't struggle. I wasn't writing it to demand anything back. I was writing it to remember, to never let it happen again. The rain slowed. A sliver of light pierced through the clouds, and somewhere deep inside me, something shifted. Not rage, not revenge, resolve. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Kyle's voice. "We needed that money more than you." And Jenna's smirk, and my mother's calm, distant voice like she was justifying burnt toast. "You have more than enough, Claire. What's wrong with helping?" It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was the complete indifference, the entitlement, the rewriting of history, turning my help into an obligation, turning me into a villain for saying no. The next morning, I woke up before the sun and sat down at my kitchen table. I logged into my bank account again, downloaded every transaction from the last 10 days, 17 pages long. I printed them out page after page, like building a case file. Because that's what this had become, not a family issue, a financial crime. One transaction stood out, $2,800 to an anonymous recipient. IP address matched my mom's house. But I knew I had never logged into my bank account on that machine. I'd only checked email. Someone had intentionally accessed it. They waited. They planned this, while I was laughing with them in the backyard, eating barbecue under string lights. They were plotting how to empty my account. That weekend, I went back to my mom's house, not to confront, to document. Same roast in the oven, same lemonade on the table, but the tension hung thick, like smoke no one would name. I placed the stack of papers down in the center of the table. "I've reviewed every transaction," I said, voice steady. "My account was accessed from this house." Jenna crossed her arms. "You left it logged in. It's not like we hacked anything." I looked her straight in the eye. "So you admit it?" She shrugged. "I mean, yeah, it was open. You didn't lock it." Kyle chimed in, chuckling. "You've helped before. What's the difference now?" I clenched my jaw. "The difference is consent. Helping means you ask, and I agree. What you did was theft." Mom finally looked up from her salad. "Claire, sweetheart, you live alone, no kids, no debt. You're the strong one. Jenna's raising a child. Kyle's still finding his path. Family means sharing." I nearly laughed. Sharing? No, sharing is mutual. This was draining. I spoke slowly, not from anger, but exhaustion. I've been the strong one for 10 years. I skipped vacations, canceled dates, lived on instant noodles. Just so the light stayed on in this house, I thought I was helping, but really, I was enabling. Dad folded his newspaper with a sigh, annoyed. "Don't be harsh. You've always been the one we could count on. You know that." And that's when it hit me. They didn't respect me. They depended on me. There's a difference. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were receipts, bank statements, screenshots, years of silent sacrifice. I stood up, paused at the doorway, and turned to them one last time. If this is how you treat the only person who never asked for a thing, don't be surprised when she starts taking back what she's owed. Kyle laughed, mocking. What are you gonna do, Claire? Call the cops? I met his gaze, unflinching. No, Kyle, I already did. And for the first time in years, I walked out of that house without looking back. Not as their bank, not as their safety net, but as someone who was finally done. I got home just as the sun dipped below the Seattle skyline, painting the clouds in soft purples and burning orange. But inside me, there was no peace, just fire. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and placed the folder beside me. It was time to do what they never expected. Not scream, not beg, but document, organize, and act. Over the next 3 nights, I built a spreadsheet. I went back to the very beginning. $92.50 for Jenna's phone bill 3 years ago, $3,200 for Kyle's emergency medical bills, $650 for Mom's overdue utilities, while the $350 Kyle spent on a gaming console last Black Friday. I remembered that one clearly because I had to skip a winter trip with coworkers just to make my insurance payment. I color-coded everything, green for medical, yellow for essentials, red for unjustifiable BS. By Monday, I had a USB, a printed folder, and a completed complaint form. I walked into the Financial Crimes Division, heart pounding but feet steady. A young officer named Harper sat across from me, flipping through my paperwork. Her eyes widened as she turned each page. "This is incredibly thorough," she said. "We're opening a preliminary investigation for financial fraud and unauthorized access." She paused, looked up. "Do you have the names of the individuals involved?" I handed her the list. Jenna Walker, Kyle Walker, Diane Jennings, Charles Jennings. She nodded. "We'll be in touch." I walked out under gray skies, but this time, there was a flicker of something warm inside me. Not revenge, relief. Because for the first time in years, someone saw it. Someone outside the family saw what I had endured. 2 weeks later, I was mid-Zoom meeting when an unknown number popped up. I stepped out onto the balcony, heart racing. It was Harper. "Claire, we've finished our preliminary investigation. There's enough to move forward. The investigative unit will visit the residences today." I stood there frozen, phone pressed to my ear, wind brushing past me. That night, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. First it was Mom, then Jenna, then Kyle. Voicemails, texts, calls. "Claire, what are you doing? Call your mother now." "You went too far." "You called the police? Seriously?" I didn't respond to any of them. Then a message from an old neighbor. "Hey, there are 3 people here from the Financial Crimes Unit. They're outside your mom's house, asking about you." The next morning at work, my manager pulled me aside. "Claire, we got a call from a local reporter asking to verify an investigation tied to your name. We didn't confirm anything, but if you need time, just say the word." I smiled softly. "Thank you, but I'm okay. I'm finally doing the right thing." That night, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker to life. Jenna's words echoed in my head. "This family only survives because of you." Maybe she was right, but they never saw me. They only saw what I gave. And now that I had taken that away, they were flailing. They never thought I'd actually walk away. Never thought I'd have the courage to say, "Enough." But I wasn't the same Claire anymore. And this time, they were going to learn what that really meant. The fallout came faster than I expected. By Thursday, the first real cracks appeared. Amanda, Jenna, sent a barrage of texts. Her tone swung wildly between pleading and furious. "My bank account is frozen, Claire. I can't pay Haley's tuition. You win, okay? Are you happy now?" "You're destroying your own family for what, a few $1,000s?" I didn't answer, because it wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about dignity, about finally being seen, not used. Later that night, Harper called again. "Claire, here's the update. We've confirmed that Jenna committed unauthorized transfers, Kyle participated knowingly, and your parents used stolen funds to pay off parts of their mortgage. Each charge is serious and recoverable." I sat very still, staring at the city skyline through the glass. I wasn't cheering. I wasn't gloating. I just felt empty, like I had stepped out of a long, punishing storm, and now only the quiet remained. 10 minutes after that call, another message came in, this time from Kyle, using a burner email. The subject line, "Please, Claire." Inside it read, "I've been suspended from work. They're investigating my accounts. I can't lose everything over one mistake. Can't you help me? Can't you tell them it was just a misunderstanding?" I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence grow thick around me. The same man who had laughed in my face now sounded like a drowning man grasping for a rope. But I didn't flinch. I didn't waver because I finally understood something they never did. Actions have consequences. By Friday morning, my father reached out for the first time since everything exploded. A single cold text. The bank sent us a foreclosure warning. If we don't pay in 30 days, we lose the house. That was it. No apology, no responsibility, just a last-ditch effort to guilt me into saving them, again. I reread the message twice, feeling nothing but a cold, exhausted sadness. The same sadness I used to drown in when I wired money I couldn't afford to lose. The same sadness that had eaten away at me while they celebrated new cars, new phones, funded partly by my sacrifices. I put down the phone without responding, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. That weekend, I needed space to think. I drove north along the coast toward a small beach my dad used to take me to when I was little. Back then, it was the only place that felt untouched by family demands. Now it became the first place I went, not to escape, but to breathe. The ocean stretched out before me, wide, wild, untamed. Waves crashed against the shore, uncaring and free. I stood there a long time, the wind pulling at my hair, thinking about everything I'd given up for people who only called when they needed something. Thinking about all the times they said, "You're the strong one, Claire," when what they really meant was, "You're the expendable one, the one we can drain without ever asking how much it hurts." Standing there, watching the water churn, I made a quiet promise to myself. No more. No more late-night wire transfers. No more skipped meals to cover someone else's irresponsibility. No more sacrificing my peace so they could live comfortably. I had always believed that family meant unconditional support. But real family, real love, doesn't demand your destruction. When I finally turned to leave, the last light of the sun slipped behind the hills, and with it, the last lingering guilt I had ever carried for putting myself first. Driving home, I realized something simple and life-changing. I hadn't lost my family. I had simply outgrown them, and finally, mercifully, found myself. 3 weeks later, I filed for an extended leave of absence. I didn't tell anyone, no announcement, no dramatic goodbye. Just packed everything I owned into the trunk of a rented hybrid and left Seattle on a cloudy Wednesday morning. I drove across the state like shedding an old skin, not just of a woman exhausted by family, but of one who had spent her whole adult life apologizing for having boundaries. I arrived in Boulder, Colorado, a place I once passed through on a work trip years ago. Back then, I only had a few hours to sip coffee in a downtown cafe with warm lights and soft jazz playing in the background. But that moment stayed with me. It felt quiet, safe. Now it became my fresh start. I rented a tiny studio overlooking the mountains. White walls, big windows, a secondhand bookshelf I painted myself. I filled vases with fresh flowers, bought a yellow mug that made me smile every morning, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to clear space for someone else's chaos. I changed my number, set up remote work with my company, and with every sunrise that poured through my window, I felt lighter, clearer, more myself. Just 2 weeks after settling in, my boss Julian called. "Claire, I just read your new strategy proposal. It's brilliant. Have you ever considered leading the West Coast region?" I paused. A year ago, I would have said no. Too much pressure. Too many things at home. Too much family to worry about. But now the only thing I was responsible for was me. I looked out at the pine trees glowing in afternoon light and said, "I'm ready." Julian laughed. "I knew you'd say that. Congrats, Claire." After the call, I made a cup of chamomile tea and curled up on the balcony, wrapped in a knit blanket. The wind was gentle. The silence wasn't lonely. It was luxurious. That night, I opened my journal, the same one I'd started when the storm first broke. I wrote one sentence. "I am not the family bank. I am Claire." I didn't expect a reply. but life had its own way of answering. The next morning, I received an email from someone named Melanie Carter. It took me a second to remember her. Jenna's cousin-in-law. Quiet, soft-spoken, someone who always blended into the background at family events. The subject line read, "Thank you, Claire." Emptied, she wrote, "You probably don't remember me. I once babysat Haley after a birthday party. You gave me a ride home that night. I never forgot how kind you were. I've watched from the sidelines for years, hearing the way they talked about you, what they expected, what they demanded. And I stayed silent, thinking it wasn't my place. But after hearing what you did, after watching you draw a line, I couldn't stay silent anymore. You helped me realize that saying no isn't cruel. It's self-protection. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You gave the rest of us permission to do the same." I sat there frozen, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold. Not because I was sad, but because something had begun to bloom inside me, something I hadn't felt in years, being seen. Melanie wasn't the only one. A few weeks earlier, an old college friend had messaged me after reading my blog. "I used to think you didn't need anyone," she wrote, "but now I get it. You were so strong, people forgot to ask if you were tired." I read that line over and over again because it was true. No one had ever taught me that kindness doesn't mean erasing your own limits. That being a good daughter or sister or niece doesn't mean burning yourself to keep everyone else warm. That night, I replied to Melanie's email, "You're not alone, and you're not selfish. You're just learning to love yourself the right way, and there's nothing wrong with that." I hit send, and for the first time, it didn't feel like I was closing a door. It felt like I was opening a new one. Not to blood ties, but to the kind of people who love without conditions, who see you as a person, not a resource, and who never make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. The next morning, sunlight spilled into my room like a quiet blessing. I pulled back the curtains, took a deep breath, and felt nothing weighing down my chest anymore. I was no longer the Claire who stayed silent, no longer the one who gave without pause. Now I was Claire, who knew how to say enough, and knew when it was time to walk away. And the most beautiful part, this time, I wasn't walking alone. On a crisp October Sunday, I wandered down a cobblestone path near my new neighborhood park. The maple leaves were changing, fiery reds, golden yellows, deep forgiving browns. A little girl raced past on her bike, laughing as her mother chased behind, shouting, "Slow down, sweetheart." I stood still for a moment, coffee in hand, watching the scene like it was a painting come to life. A mother running toward, not away. A child free to fall, knowing someone would catch her. Something stirred inside me, something old, something buried. A sense of lightness I hadn't felt since, maybe ever. I used to think I had to earn that moment, that I had to give enough, sacrifice enough, shrink myself just enough, to be worthy of peace. But now I knew better. I had been enough all along. They just never saw me, not really. I thought back to all the times I said yes when I meant no, all the birthdays I skipped, the trips I canceled, the clothes I put back on the rack, so someone else could feel secure, so I could prove I was a good daughter. But they never asked me if I was tired, if I felt alone, if I needed anything. They just took. And when I finally stopped giving, they called me ungrateful, cruel, cold. For a while, I believed them, but now I knew the truth. I didn't lose my family. I outgrew them. And I found someone far more important, myself. I started doing the little things I used to put off. I learned how to make risotto, creamy, lemon-scented, my favorite. I bought a bright red dress I used to think was too bold for the office. I joined a pottery class every Saturday morning and laughed with strangers who asked nothing of me except to pass the clay. My home slowly filled with small things that carried big meaning. A rock I picked up on my first hike in Boulder. A dried bouquet from the local market. A leather journal half full of truths I had once been too scared to say aloud. One afternoon, I received a postcard from Kelly, a former co-worker who had moved to Italy. On the back, in delicate handwriting, she wrote, "Because of you, I finally moved to Rome. I stopped waiting for permission to live my life. Thank you, Claire." I pinned it to my wall, right next to a quote I had scribbled on a sticky note the night I first walked away. "You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." It took years of silent burning to understand that, but now I had stopped. And instead of ashes, there was peace. No, this new life wasn't loud. There was no standing ovation. No one from the past came running to apologize. And that was okay, because peace doesn't need witnesses. It only needs room to bloom. I don't know if Jenna will ever call again, if Kyle will ever say sorry, if my mom will ever understand what she truly lost. Maybe one day they'll reflect, or maybe they won't. But I'm not waiting anymore, because I'm no longer living for someone else's version of love. I'm no longer holding the door open for people who only ever came to take. If love means constant sacrifice, that's not love, that's survival, and I survived long enough. So now I live. What do you think about Claire's choice? Was she right to walk away from her family, or should she have forgiven and stayed? Let us know in the comments. And if you've ever felt like Claire, if you've ever had to choose yourself just to breathe, share your story. Someone out there might need it. And don't forget to subscribe to Ian True Tales for more powerful stories where real people reclaim their worth, one boundary at a time.